Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for quick tips for effective email and social media copywriting. I'm Jill Bastian, and today Amber Ricchetti and I are going to present some tips for you to help with your copywriting. Just a couple of things before I get started. This webinar is about 35 minutes to 40 minutes long, depending on how much we get talking on some of our slides. And then at the end, we will do a Q&A as we do for all of our webinars. So if you think of some questions along the way, go ahead and type them into the box that you see in the GoToWebinar window, and we'll be happy to answer as many of those as we can at the end of the webinar. The number one question we get for pretty much anything we do like this, and if you've been to any of our webinars, you already know what I'm going to say, but the number one question is this being recorded? And the answer is yes, we are recording this. This will be available on the recorded webinars page on our help site later on. So you'll be able to take a look at some of the slides if you want to go back and have a refresher. I will also put the slides up on the help site as well. We've added a page for slides, so there'll be some slides there if you'd rather just look at the slides and not listen to Amber and I's awesome tips. So with that, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, hi everybody. I'm Amber, and we will begin at the beginning, which is the agenda. So just to let you know what we'll be going over and cover in the next 40 minutes or so, we will go over getting started with writing, the idea of features versus benefits. Then we will do some structure and style analysis and tips. And then we will get into writing for email specifically, and then Twitter, Facebook, and blogs. And then we will also talk about some tips for repurposing content among these different writing mediums so that you're not recreating the wheel every time. And then, of course, proofreading. And then we will go over some amazingly helpful resources for you guys. So the first one here, getting started, I think it's pretty commonly felt that sometimes the hardest part of anything is just getting started, and that is very true when it comes to copywriting and writing as well. Writer's block is one of those things that happens to the best of us when you're just staring at a piece of paper needing to get started.
Or a blank text file.
Exactly. Usually it's online now, even if it's just a PowerPoint you're writing and it's like blank and it's like, oh my gosh, where do I start? So we'll go over some ways to just break the ice. So the first one is asking these 4 key questions before you even begin to write. And this will really help you hone in on what it is that you're trying to convey, what you want to get across, and how to do that. So the first one is just, what am I selling? What is it? For us, it's email. To whom am I selling? Who is my audience? Why am I selling this now? What is the relevance to the audience? Will it make sense to the customer at this stage in the life cycle or whatever the process is? And what do I want my reader to do? And that is the CTA, and we talk about that a lot.
The call to action.
The call to action. The call to action, we talk about that a lot in email, be it a button, including a call to action in the subject line. What is it that you want your reader to do? So next on the list of getting started is finding copy ideas. So once you've really honed in on what it is that you want to accomplish, you need to figure out how should I really get started with writing that. So you can think about what's new, if you have a new product, a new feature for your business. Do you have any advice? Be an expert. Whatever it is, an experience that you had that you could share with your audience or your customer that will be helpful. And then in addition to that, do you have a story to tell? Make it personal. Share your own personal experience. Do you have any exclusive content? This is something that's really great. We do that a lot with email, like exclusive for email, exclusive online offer, anything of that sort. Do you just have a really good offer, a great percentage offer, a discount that you can't, that nobody will be able to turn down, you know? If you're having trouble, you can read the headlines in the news. So I find that to be really helpful, just going on, scanning the newspaper, logging online, just seeing what's out there, what's happening, and that really sparks some ideas. And then you can do something similar with social media. Maybe go on Facebook, go on Twitter, LinkedIn, just see like what's happening in the space. If there's any blogs that you really like, read those if they're industry specific, and just figure out what's going on and can you leverage that or use that as ideas.
So once you have some ideas for what you want to write about, you are going to want to start brainstorming what it is. And for most people, this is probably the hardest part, is getting started. So one of the things that you can do is one of these brainstorming techniques. That we have some examples on this slide for you, which can help you get past that blank text file or blank piece of paper that you're looking at right now. So one of the things you can do is cluster writing, and that is something where you do a little pre-writing where you can explore whatever ideas as they occur. So you can just do whatever comes to mind, write it down, and then from there you can take the key points and get started with that. You could do a Venn diagram. There's a picture on the screen here of a Venn diagram where you can kind of use the pre-writing process, but compare and contrast ideas with the diagram like that to help you get started. You could also do a mind map where you have a diagram that links ideas around a central keyword or idea, and that is the one in the top right-hand corner. So you can put one idea down and then draw linking ideas to it to help you get started. Or you could just do free writing, just write until you hit the point that you want to get the information that you're trying to get started with, and then take some of the pieces that you've written and then go from there. So some of the things that you want to keep in mind are when you're writing, you want to keep in mind what is going to be appealing to the person reading your email or your blog. So one of the things to keep in mind is features versus benefits. So features are what your product or service has, and benefits are what it's going to provide to the customer, what's in it for the customer, because they're always going to ask that question, what's in it for me? So you want to make sure that you're presenting your information to answer that question for them. So we have some examples here. Made of steel, so that's a feature. A product is made of steel. Or you never have to replace it. That's a benefit. Sure, it's made of steel and you never have to replace it, but your customer wants to know what's in it for them, so never having to replace it is what's in it for them. Home delivered is a feature versus save time and money because they don't have to go out and buy it. So that's a benefit for the customer. So keep that in mind when you're writing. Write what you think your customer is going to be asking you when they're reading the blog or email or whatever you're writing. So a little bit on the structure and style, now that you have some ideas. We've talked a little bit about how to get started. So once you've brainstormed and you have some ideas and you kind of know where the direction of your copy is going to go, there's some simple structure guidelines that will help make the writing process a little bit more simple and hopefully painless for you. Number one, less is more. So one of the statistics we have, sorry, people read 25% slower online than offline. So you need to write a little less copy to make sure that they have the ability to read what you've written for them. Also, number two, put key points up front. We talk about this all the time for writing just about any part of your email. You want the important information at the beginning where your reader is going to read it. So if you're writing a subject line, the important piece of information at the beginning. If you're writing an email, you want the important article or whatever it is, the call to action for your email near the top where people are going to see it. So when you're just writing in general, keep the important points at the beginning of your paragraph. If you're creating a list or you're writing bullets, make sure the important pieces of information is at the beginning. Again, you want to keep it short. And what this is really talking about is the length of your paragraphs. So again, people read less online than they do on the printed paper. So your paragraphs are going to be a little bit shorter than what you would write if you were writing a novel, for example. So you really want them to be around 3 lines long. Otherwise, you could lose your reader's attention. And that might sound really short, but when it's online, especially if it's in like an email, that's a pretty good length for a paragraph. And, you know, especially since you're writing online, you're writing a blog or you're writing an email, you're writing Facebook, test it. See if you have more people responding or clicking the links in your shorter paragraphs if they're instead of in the ones that are a little bit longer. That's one of the things we talk about a lot in email marketing is test it. Remember odd versus even. Interestingly enough, odd numbers are easier to remember than even numbers. So if you're creating a list, stick to an odd number. You might notice this if you go to our guides page. We have a lot of guides that are 5 tips or 7 tips or 11 tips. We do a lot of odd numbered tips for our guides. It's something that's easy for people to remember. And then the last point is don't get too salesy. A good ratio for creating your email or blog or whatever is 0.75% of your blog or whatever it is, email, is just general information that your readers are going to be interested in versus a quarter of that as actual sales information. So if you're creating an email, you can have an area in your email or part of your email where you're selling a product or you're selling your service, but you want to have other valuable information in there for your readers, which will keep them coming back for the information you're providing. So just enough relevant information to keep their attention, so you don't want to have too many things where you're trying to just say bye, bye, bye.
And that also applies to your social media as well, especially your Facebook and your Twitter. Our social media manager really limits the amount of information that he puts out there on our feeds or posts that are really salesy because it can be a big turnoff to our customers and to the audience.
Especially if you're writing for Twitter, because Twitter goes by really fast, and if the only thing you're seeing is somebody saying bye, 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 it's a really easy way to turn people off.
It just seems so spammy.
Yeah.
It's like very impersonal.
Yeah, so always try to include something that has nothing to do with your recipient's buying.
Free information. And then a little bit more about structure and style. So the first one here is the rhythm of 3, and this is just the simple idea of listing your examples in groups of 3. There's something about the cadence that of 3 that gives a really nice rhythm to your copy. So an example of this would be like happy, joyous, and free, or quick, cheap, and easy, or just like grouping things together in 3s. It just has a really nice rhythm to it that is very comforting and inviting to your audience. So it's something to keep in mind when you're writing. Another thing is cut the clutter. And I have this quote here that I really like. It's by William Zinsser, and it says, "Clutter is the disease of American writing." And this is pretty true. It's a lot more difficult to say the same thing in one paragraph as it is to say it in a whole page. So if you can go through and really make sure that you're getting to the meat of what you're trying to say without putting in a lot of filler, it'll really help your customers or your audience get the main point a lot faster. And because it's online and things happen so quickly, especially as Jill said with Twitter, if you're not making it easy for them, they'll miss it completely. So really cut out a lot of the words that you don't need, and easy examples, quick ones you could do are like that or to. When we speak, we even throw those in a lot, but just take out some of the filler, get to the point quicker. Another thing to keep in mind is varying sentence length. So it's really important to do this because it'll help hold your reader's attention. If you have a lot of really long sentences and you don't break it up, they're not going to make them through the sentences. It's nice to have like maybe one with a few commas and then a really short sentence after that. You can even use fragments, and it's okay to start a sentence with the word and or because. It's not your high school English class. You're not going to get chastised or, lose points for that. It's how people speak, and it's good to write how you speak, and that is just a way that makes it more approachable. Another thing is this idea of bucket brigade words. And these are words that help to move your copy forward. So especially if you're writing a blog or maybe a white paper or a guide or something that's a little bit longer, you can really move the copy by using these words. And words that are bucket brigade words are, for example, remember, and, but, consider, however, for example. And you could just go online and search bucket brigade words, and a whole bunch will come up, even more than I just listed, if you're interested in seeing what is out there available to move the copy forward. And then another thing is to consider your font style. So when you're writing for online, like email, well, really the only place where you have control over this, but like email, your website, blogs, you want to use a sans serif font. And examples of this type of font are Arial, Verdana, Helvetica. Those are very popular for online, and it's because they're just easier on the eye to read online. Serif fonts, like Times New Roman, those are better for offline. If you're doing a postcard or some sort of a direct mail piece, you could use that. But for online, you want to stick to fonts like Arial and Verdana. And then another thing is to consider pictures versus text. We talk about that a lot, especially in email. You don't want to have obviously a giant email or image. There's a lot of problems with that as far as rendering. Um, but then you don't want to have just all copy because it's not really inviting or interesting to the reader's eye. So we actually recommend the ratio of 80% text to 20% pictures. And that is just a really good combination that's not overloaded or unbalanced in either direction.
And the images, especially in your email and in your blog, make it easier for your readers to find the text and read it. And the images help break up that text so that it's easier on the eyes to read. And it makes it a little more inviting, as Amber said, if they don't have to sit there and read pages and pages of text.
Absolutely, especially if you're using an image as an example, like supporting a new product feature or something that actually has something that's really pertinent to what you're saying that they could see, oh, okay, I see how that's going to look online or something. We do that a lot when we use, for example, our segmentation feature. It's helpful to take a screenshot and show our audience.
Yeah.
And a little more about structure and style, and then we'll move on to writing for specific platforms. But your voice should reflect your company, and this is really the idea of branding. You just need to be consistent. So if you're writing from your CEO's perspective on the blog, which is how we do ours, it doesn't make sense for someone that's really techie to come in and use all these technical terms. It's not going to make sense to our audience. So we like to be friendly, relatable. But a lot of other companies, maybe B2Bs, or could possibly be a little bit more just businessy, or techie if you're writing for that type of audience. So just consider, what is your company, who's your audience, and what's the type of conversation that you're having, and how do you want to sound to them. Another thing is to show some personality. So it's okay to kind of branch out and try something new. You don't want to go too far off to one direction if your customers or your audience won't expect that, and it might be a little off-putting to them. You don't want to be like too casual if you're writing for a business group or something. If you're a mom writing a blog to other moms, you could use a lot of terms that would be relatable, and that could be more of a friendly tone. So just think about who you are and what's your audience, and figure out your voice and your personality. And as I said, you just want to write for the audience. So if it's a specific industry, business, or consumer, keep that in mind and think about, what will they know? What makes sense to them? What are words that they would understand, or do I need to explain this? Maybe you could use some acronyms, but you want to make sure that they will know what they are.
Like CTA?
CTA, I know. I did that. Yeah, I said CTA, and if you don't know what that is, it doesn't make any sense. Call to action. So after I explain it, then I could, use the acronym.
CTA all you want.
Exactly. And then personalize as well. You want to make it feel like it's written for your audience. So they're one person. It's a one-to-one ratio. You don't want it to seem too much like you're writing for this general audience that's not applicable. If you're doing an email, you could try first name personalization. We sometimes use like VR customer. We'll merge field in an industry, that kind of thing, so that it feels like it's written for the audience. And for the individual reader. And then we mentioned this a little bit before, but if you have a story, share it. It's just really relatable, and it really helps to bring in some personality and make what you're writing seem really personal.
So now we're going to get into some more specific information. So writing for emails, one of the things that you want to keep in mind, again, as I mentioned earlier, is you need to make sure you put the important stuff at the beginning of your subject line, at the beginning of your email. If there is something specific that you want your readers to do with your email, make sure that is above the fold. So for example, that's really a newspaper term, but it's been applied to websites and things online. Above the fold is before your readers start scrolling on the email. So if you have an event, if you have a special sale, if there's some specific information that you really want your email readers to see, that's going to need to be at the beginning of your email. The longer your email is and the further into it they get, the more likely you're going to lose the people along the way. So one of the things to keep in mind with your email is what's at the beginning. And what's at the very beginning is your from label and subject line, and that's what the first impressions here are. So when you're writing for your email, again, from label, you've probably heard me say this before unless this is your first VR webinar demo. The from label needs to be the sender of the email, and this is how the people receiving your email are going to know who's sending the email to them. Generally speaking, you want this to be your company name because that's who they're going to know. That's who they signed up with. That's what they recognize. They'll recognize that more than they'll recognize a person's name, like a salesperson or your CEO's name. So usually you want to have your company name there. Subject line, once they know who's sending the email, the subject line gets them to want to open the email. So these are two very important things that you're going to be writing. The subject line is probably the most important piece of the email that you're going to write, because once they see the subject line, this is where they're going to decide if they're going to open your email or not. So it doesn't matter how fabulous the content is inside. If they don't see it, they're never going to know. So your subject line needs to be pretty compelling. It has to pertain to the content of your email. That's what the CAN-SPAM law says. You can't do anything tricky with your subject line. And it can't be really long because most email programs are going to cut it off at about 40 to 50 characters. So you have about 6 to 8 words, depending how long your words are, to get people to want to open your email. And again, you want to make sure that the important information is at the beginning. The other thing, not all email programs do this, but the third option on this page, or the third dash on this page, is pre-header text. Pre-header text is actually the first line of text in your email, no matter where it is. Generally speaking, most people creating emails do pre-header, and that's going to be at the beginning of your email, so before like your logo box and all of the stuff where your email starts. This is like a little snippet of text at the very, very top of your email, and it gets pulled into the subject line. If you look at the screenshot there, on the left is the from label, in the middle is the subject line, and then on the right is the pre-header text. Now, as I said, not all email clients do this, but enough do it that you want to pay a little attention to that, because you want to make sure that it's giving more information to support your subject line without repeating it. So try not to repeat your subject line in the pre-header text. The other time this becomes really important is for people who are looking at emails on cell phones, because they definitely get to see the pre-header text there. So keep in mind that a segment of your audience are going to be reading what you're writing, not just on a computer, but on some handheld device, which makes it a little more tricky, but you just have to make sure you're keeping important information at the beginning. And just a little more on subject lines. As I said, this is such an important thing that you're going to be writing for your emails that there are some things to keep in mind. In fact, it's so important we do a webinar just on writing subject lines. We just did it, so we don't have it coming up anytime soon. But if you're interested in learning more on subject lines, more of the do's and don'ts, if you go to our help site, help.verticalresponse.com, and click on webinars, it's recorded there, and you can take a look at some of the information.
And on our guides page, we also have a subject line guide, as well as like a getting started with subject lines.
Yeah, there's some like subject lines you can just fill in the blanks
Yeah,
with.
exactly.
We already wrote them for you.
Subject line mad libs.
Yeah, subject line mad libs. So these are some things to keep in mind when you're writing your subject line. As I said, you get, depending on the email program, 40 to 50 characters. So that's about 6 to 8 words, depending on how long you're writing. So it's not a lot. Again, your from label should be your company name, so don't repeat it in the subject line. Again, I can't say it too much. The most valuable information has to be at the beginning, because not everyone's going to see it if you put it at the end. You definitely want to test what works for your recipients on the subject line, because you might write the best subject line ever, but your recipients may not care. It may not be enough to get their attention. So test that subject line, maybe test another one and see which one they react to better. Maybe a longer one works for you, maybe something with just a couple of letters, sale today, maybe that works for them. You know, you can test your recipients and see what they respond to. Another thing for subject lines, if you have any kind of special offer or an incentive, if you have a sale, if you're having an event, something like that, that's a great thing to get people's attention in the subject lines. Also, creating a sense of urgency. So tell them that they have a limited time to do whatever it is you're trying to get them to do. And if you mention that in the subject line, final day today, last day to sign up for our webinar before the prices go up, or whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do, give them a sense of urgency to kind of force them to do what you're trying to get them to do. And as I mentioned, the canned spam does have some rules regarding subject lines, so it can't be misleading. You can't trick people to open your email.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to writing for social media, and the first type of social media that we'll be talking about is Twitter. And for the most part, what Jill just talked about in regards to the subject lines is really directly applicable to social media, and especially Twitter, because there's such a small amount of space, 140 character limitation. So besides how it's going to render, in that type of thing, like in the email, it really does apply. So the first thing that we have here is to follow the 4 U's, and this is a technique taught by the American writers and artists. And the first one is to be useful to the reader. So when you're writing a tweet, it needs to be useful to them. You want to provide a sense of urgency, and this is very similar to what Jill just talked about as far as the subject line. So, why is this happening now? Is there a timeline on it? That'll really help to get them to act. You want to convey the idea that the main benefit is somehow unique. So if I'm offering a sale and you're offering a sale, why is my sale better or different? If this is information that's been talked about a lot, industry information about email, for example, how is this information better than the last information that was given? And then the last one here is do all of the above in an ultra-specific way. So it has to be super applicable, and you really need to stand out. There's so much information flying around there on Twitter. They're so short, these little tweets, and they happen at this rapid pace that it needs to be specific and stand out so that it's not missed. So there's some other considerations when it comes to writing tweets for Twitter. A lot of people will tell you that a good Twitter headline, and that's just what you can call the tweet, is as short as possible. So writing for Twitter in that case is really similar to writing a good subject line. And this is due not only to the 140 character limit that Twitter imposes, but also because in order for your headline to spread, people need room to retweet it. So the shorter it is, the more space they have. So when it comes to Twitter, you want to really think about keeping it short and think about the retweet. So as you can see in this example, there's a RT in front of it, which means that it's retweeted. This one's actually been retweeted twice.
Yeah.
So if my main tweet is so long that there's no space, people get frustrated. They don't want to go in. If they just want to retweet it, they don't want to have to modify it.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll deter them from retweeting your content and getting it spread further and more viral. Other things to keep in mind are the use of hashtags. And you can see that there are 2 hashtags in this tweet example, hashtag leadership and hashtag manager. When I'm writing tweets that are about email marketing or social media, I'll do hashtag email marketing, hashtag SM, hashtag social, whatever it is. And if you want a list of hashtags to find out what's out there, what's being used, you can go to hashtags.org and see what is applicable for your company, for your business. And that way it really spreads the tweet further, because people might not be following you, but they might be following a certain hashtag, and it groups all tweets by hashtag. So it really spreads your reach, and that's why hashtags are important. Another thing to keep in mind is to shorten your URL to save space. A lot of URLs are really, really long, and if you only have 140 characters, that might be the whole tweet. So if you go to bit.ly or owly, you can shorten it, and you can see as well in this tweet here that this one's been shortened by bit.ly, and it really makes a lot more space for there to be double retweets, the actual tweet itself, hashtags, @ signs, which means you're writing to a specific person or saying that @so-and-so @Vera for small biz, and that also will show up in that company or person's feed as well. So there are a lot of things to keep in mind when writing for Twitter. Most important, to keep it short so that all of these things can occur. So more about writing content for Twitter. When it comes to the actual content, one approach is to teach. So teach others something new or hand out a tip. And that's like really good free info, right? I'm not pushing email marketing. I'm not pushing vertical response. I'm pushing, hey, we have a new guide on email. That's free and it offers something and it's teaching.
And that goes back to the point we made earlier where 3/4 of what you're writing, even if it's for Twitter, should be useful information for the people following you, and 1/4 sales.
Exactly. So not sign up and make a purchase and get our guide.
Right.
So, however, we love that. Compliment. So if you're on Twitter and you don't really know what to say, you can just compliment someone about a tweet they posted or a great service. If you had a really good experience with a different company, really good customer service, or a great in-store, whatever it was, tweet about that. Do like an @ to that company if you follow them on Twitter, and it lets them know that you really appreciated that experience that you had. And that's just a great way to get the conversation going, and it's really easy content for you, right? You're just sharing an experience that you had. You don't even have to make something up. That's already there. It's like a little mini story. Another one is to start a conversation. So ask questions and respond to questions too. And that's where the @ sign is really important, because if somebody asks you a question, you can @ them and then answer the question, and that way the conversation's linked and they will get your answer. Another one is refers. So when you're writing content for Twitter, if you had a really great deal or service or sale that is out there that you heard about that you're not pushing on your own, you could share that with your followers, and that's just like sharing information, referring another business, but you're not getting anything out of it. You're just saying, hey, I found this great deal. You might be interested in it as well. Speaking of sharing, you can share good news or a funny story or an inspirational quote. So if something great happened for your company, for us, we're frequently nominated for awards, or the CEO wins a lot of awards, that type of thing. Could share that information. And then just think about help. Think about paying it forward. How can you offer help to people that are out there? And then going back to the retweet, just retweet other people's tweets, other companies that you like or follow. It says a lot about you, both from the content you share and the fact that you're doing it at all. So that's just a really great way to reciprocate and to show that you have really good Twitter etiquette, and it's free content for you. Retweeting someone else
Very
is
easy.
easy.
You don't have to rate anything there.
Nope. So now we're moving on to social media for Facebook. So, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about with email and Twitter, it really just applies down the line. Similar to Twitter, you want to keep it brief. So if you're writing a post, keep it to no more than 4 lines, and seriously, 1 or 2 is better. It's really similar to writing for an email, right? If it's not broken up, you just have this giant content or text block, it's really off-putting. People have a short attention span. There's a lot going on out there. They're not going to read it. If they see you have some giant post that showed up in their feed, they might, ignore it, and it's harder for them to find the meat of that content that relates to them or is applicable. You also want to phrase things so that it's likable. This is
especially since there's no dislike.
Yeah, there's no dislike button. So you want to make sure that what you're writing is something that's going to make people want to interact with it and be like, ooh, I like that. If you post a photo that's a really cute photo, and we do have, I know Jill's going to talk about this a little bit in the blog section, but we post on Facebook when we had Bring Your Child to Work Day, and took photos of the kids in the office, and people like that. It's so likable. How can you not like that? Or when our CEO brings her dog to work. Super cute. I even posted on my own wall, and tons of people liked it.
Yeah,
so,
me too.
Yeah, it's really easy to do, and it keeps a really positive vibe, and it's great content for you. Another thing is use videos and photos in your updates. So this is something I don't know a lot about. I'm gonna say it, and our social media manager is gonna write a blog post about this very soon, so we will have more information. But all I know, the short of it, is that Facebook uses EdgeRank to determine which statuses appear in news feeds, and the ones that have photos and videos get higher ranking than just text updates or text statuses or posts. So that's just something to keep in mind, that if you include a video or a photo along with some text, it's more likely in the Facebook algorithm that it will appear in the newsfeed. Not everything appears in everyone's newsfeed.
Yeah, it's just basically things that people find more appealing,
Mhm.
which is what EdgeRank is using. So it's using, if you post often, that helps pull your information to your the people who are following you to
And
their
it,
news page, as well as videos and photos, because people always look at videos and photos that are pasted in Facebook, so that will pull it just automatically.
and if your content's likable and people are interacting with it,
Yeah.
that'll also give you higher ranking too. So, all things to keep in mind. More information coming soon. And develop a personal style on Facebook. This is really similar to writing for your email or on your blog or on your website. It's just basically having a style and being consistent with your branding, and a lot of it is writing the way you speak, especially on Facebook. Twitter is a little bit more business oriented. Facebook has a slightly more personal feel, especially because there's like a main place people can go. They can see your photos. You can have a lot more information. So you can really have a persona on Facebook. It's a great way to show your personality. So let that shine in your writing when you write your posts. And then the other one is to get fans engaged, and then this will also heighten your ranking. But a great way to do this is with Facebook questions or polls. If you need some content and you don't want to do a whole post, run a really quick poll. Ask a few questions, and it'll just get a conversation started. We have a blog about that on our VR marketing blog that you can check out, or you can just go to facebook.com/questions and get a whole bunch of information about how to easily do that for your business. A little bit more about Facebook. So these are just some examples. So as you can see here, and these are all from the vertical response page too. So here somebody posted a question and we answered the question. The support answered, or the social media manager responded and said, oh, I heard that you talked to support, and so it kept a conversation going, but we didn't ignore the question that was being asked by one of our customers. The worst thing to do is to just ignore. To put content out there and have it be a constant one-sided conversation is really off-putting. The one over here on the right-hand side is hard to see, but it's a little puppy. So that is our CEO brought her puppy to work, and you can see there's all these likes, it got comments, and that just is an exact example of what we're talking about. And it's so easy to write that one little itty-bitty inside the C-suite, take the photo, upload the photo. And then here we also have an example of a poll that we ran. It was, what type of categories would you most prefer for your new email templates? This is important for us to help meet our customers' needs. It lets our customers know that we care about, what they're interested in, and it gets a dialogue and a conversation, and it's really easy to post the poll, and then it's really easy for our customers to just click the button. So this is some information that I found that I thought was really interesting. I wanted to share it with you. This is from Dan Zarella, and he's like this social media experiments guru. He runs a ton of tests. So there's just a little quote here from the Elements of Style, and it said, write with nouns and verbs, not with adjectives and adverbs. The adjective hasn't been built that can pull a weak or inaccurate noun out of a tight place. It is nouns and verbs, not their assistants, that give good writing its toughness and color. So this goes back to what I was saying about keeping it short and simple. You don't want to write with a lot of filler. It just covers up the main point. People are going to miss it. So Dan Zarella actually went through, did this whole experiment, and found actual results that supported this. So you can see that the nouns and the verbs affected Facebook sharing. So the more nouns and verbs that were there on average affected the average shares, and if there was adverbs or adjectives, it negatively affected the sharing that was going on. And just a quick grammar lesson. Verbs are action words like get, learn, earn, discover, read, find out, and those are basically call to actions, right? They're the CTAs that we're talking about that compel someone to do something. Noun, obviously, is the name of a person, a place, a thing, or an idea. That's very much the meat of something. You need that in there. And then the adverbs just modify the verbs, and adjectives, the job is to modify a noun or a pronoun. An example of this is colors, feelings like angry or happy, appearances, short, tall, long. A lot of this stuff, when you're writing to be concise and get your point across, you can strip out completely. If you're writing a very colorful novel, it's really nice to have.
I don't know. Sometimes there's too many of those
right,
in the novel too.
Exactly.
Well, the great thing is with this graph that Dan Zarella did, but just in general, if verbs are your call to action, you can see why you would get more traction with using a verb, as
Yes.
this graph is showing, because that's what you want people to do. Your verb is what you want people to do, so
Which shows
they're going to
doing
share it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to cover a little bit about writing for blogs, and then we're going to wrap it up. So again, a lot of the stuff that we covered earlier in the webinar is still going to apply for writing for blogs. You're going to want to keep your headlines pretty short and interesting. So your headlines you don't want to write for days, and the reason is because of the second bullet on here. Because if you want people to share your blogs on Twitter, you can't have a blog title that's super long. Otherwise, it's hard to share it. And also, as Amber pointed out earlier, it's hard for other people to retweet it. So try to keep your headlines short, compelling, interesting, just like you would be if you were writing for your subject lines for your emails. You can also, just like your subject line, you can put some kind of a promise or an offer in it, a time frame for something even if you wanted to, depending on what your blog's about, obviously. You want your blog titles to be very descriptive, again, and short, so that people who are sharing it on social media can do so easily. As Amber mentioned earlier, blogs are a place where you can get a little more personal. So write like you talk. Again, it doesn't have to be formal paragraphs. You can write a short sentence that maybe doesn't make sense if you were in your college grammar class or English class, but it's fine when you're writing for a blog. Also, it's great to ask questions. Again, with a lot of the social media writing that you're going to be doing, you want your readers to be engaged. With email, there's a really easy way for you to know. They're clicking to open the email, and you know that. They're clicking on a link to go to your website, and you know that. They're making a purchase, and you know that. It's a little tougher with social media, so you're trying to get them to be a little more engaged in an obvious way, retweeting you, answering your questions on Facebook. So this is another reason why on your blog that you want to ask some questions, because people will interact there and they can have like a little forum where they can talk. And again, just like when you're writing for your emails, this is a great place to tell a story, an experience that you had that your readers might find interesting. Again, it doesn't have to be all about selling. All you're really trying to do is connect with your readers. And so what you're going to want them to do is stay with you. So if you have something interesting like a story or a joke or some personal experience that might help them, they'll appreciate that.
Then they'll come back to your blog.
And they'll
come
back
remember,
to your blog.
Oh, that was so funny last Friday. Are they going to post another joke this Friday or something? And you could even say, like, weekly Friday, funny story. And every Friday you do something like that.
That's my whole life. I should start a blog. So a little bit more for writing for your blogs. One of the things that blogs can do for your business is increase search. Since blogs are usually updated on a more regular basis than a website, search can find it easier. It tends to come up higher sometimes if you're not paying for search. So they're very much search engine friendly, blogs are. They also are a good place for you to want to link back to your website, which I'm going to show you. I have some examples for you. But when you're writing your blog, especially if your blog isn't part of your domain, so if it isn't, like for example, ours is blog.verticalresponse.com instead of verticalresponse.com/blog. That can cause some issues with search. So you definitely want to make sure that you're linking back to your website. So if people are clicking on links in your blog, you're still sending them to your
Mhm.
website. And also so search engines can see that it's going to that website. If you are using search, especially if you're using paid search, make sure you're using the terms so that you're coming up when people are doing a search. Your blog comes up as well as your website. Um, Another thing about blogs is it's a good place for you to be able, again, to talk to the people who are interacting with you. Again, as I said earlier, this is a great way for you to know how engaged your readers are on the blog. You can track how many people are getting there, but if they're interacting by answering questions that you're posting, then that's a great way for you to know how engaged they are. So always go back and see if people are actually asking questions. So maybe your blog isn't something about cooking, for example, because I have an example of that coming up. But maybe yours is more business oriented. People might be posting questions to your blog that have to do with your business. So make sure you're going back and answering the questions that people are asking or commenting on something. Maybe somebody makes a great point after they read
Mhm.
your blog. It's great to go back and acknowledge the interest they're taking in the comments that they're writing. It helps keep them engaged. It helps keep other people engaged as well because they know that you're participating in this as well. You're not just putting the blog out there and leaving, you are participating as well. Um, Also, you can ask questions. We do this at the bottom of all of our blog posts. We'll ask you guys questions. Have you ever had this experience before? Share it with us. Have you seen anything like this? What are your examples? So we ask questions to try to help get more people to post on the blog. So you can certainly do that. That helps you to interact with them. And again, your blog is a great place for you to show that you're the expert in your business. So you can provide the information you know. You can train and educate people just through your blog. So that's some great content that you can use whenever you're writing your blog. So I have some examples. So this is one of my favorite blogs. Now, this is the Pioneer Woman. I told you that it's cooking, so this may not be applicable to what you're interested in, but there's a couple of things that she does really well. First of all, this is her job, so don't be intimidated. Your blog does not have to look like this. Um, so don't be afraid. This is what she does. But she has a couple of favorite topics that she likes to blog on. So instead of having one blog with a bunch of things going in different directions, she split her blog up into different ones. Not different pages. Every time you come to her blog, it's the same URL. But if you look at the top, she has home, confessions, cooking, photography, home and garden, homeschooling, and then she has another cooking blog where more people are actually posting and she's not. So this way it's easy for her to keep track of the information she's posting on her blog and keep it categorized, which also makes it easy for the people who are reading her blog and they can read what they're specifically interested in. So her fans can go wherever they want to look at whatever's important to them. Another great thing about her is that she writes in her voice, and she's writing like she's talking to me, not to all of us out here, but when she's writing as though she's talking to me as if I'm sitting in the room. She writes funny things, she writes with her accent that she has. It's fun and it's interesting and I never lose interest. The one thing that she does is a lot of pictures which drive me crazy, but if you're doing a cooking blog, pictures are pretty important. Um, and another thing that she does that I think is really important when you're blogging, because I know a lot of people are going, holy cow, I can't blog as much as she does, is that once a week she picks a topic and then she takes examples from other people's blogs. So she's not writing a brand new blog, she is, but she's not starting from scratch. She'll take, like last week or 2 weeks ago, she had a blog about strawberries because she was ready for strawberries to be in season. And she went to other blogs that had posts about the same thing. She took a picture of whatever they were making with strawberries. She credited the blog. You want to make sure you're doing that. So she had the name of the blog and a link to the blog so that people could go read. And then she would say something like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I'm making it today. Or something like that, something fun or funny. But this is also a great way to find content for your own blog. You don't have to blog or start from scratch every single day. You don't have to write a blog post once a week that you start from scratch. Do this occasionally. It's interesting for your readers. It helps introduce maybe some more information. It also shows that you're part of this world and that you're an expert or you have a great interest in it, and they can come to you for all of this information that you're putting in one place for them. So it's a good way for you to get some ideas just by looking at some other blogs. So now I have two examples, and not a very good screenshot here, of some of our recent blogs. And this is one of our blogs. I've just cut out part of the blog, which is why it looks so weird on this screenshot. But this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the title is really short, so it can be retweeted, or it can be tweeted and then retweeted. And then there's links. We have quite a few links in this blog post. And all of those links either go to our website, verticalresponse.com. The direct mail one goes to our postcard page. And then the other two links are going to other blogs. So we're only linking to our own information in this particular one. That doesn't mean that you can't link to other blogs or other websites. But this is one way to help with your search, so that you're linking to things that are already available from your system, your services you offer, your company.
And Janine writes in a very conversational way, too.
Yeah.
So you can read, impressive, yes. What a way to start off a Monday. Here's some questions I had. Is it real,
Yeah.
It moves forward.
As great as it is, it doesn't even come close to conveying the excitement in the office when we were all unwrapping that particular box. Okay, I have one other blog example. So this is another recent blog that we did, Social Media Engagement, Do Kids and Puppies Rule? It's funny, it's catching. It's probably a little bit long for retweeting, but it's good for tweeting. And it's very eye-catching. And again, we're repurposing content here. So this is our Facebook page, and this is something that Amber was talking about. We had the puppy in the office, and we pasted it on Facebook. Amber recently got married, and we had a celebration lunch for her, and that was on Facebook. And then we had Bring Your Kids to Work Day, and that was on our Facebook page. And all of these things got great interest from the people who are following us on Facebook. So we wrote a blog about it. Didn't have to start from scratch on that one. There's a little bit of text that we put in here. We summed up some of the screenshots that we took from Facebook, and there's a little bit more. This is a little bit longer than what you can see on my screenshot here. But the content itself pretty much came from our Facebook page. So you don't have to start from scratch to write your blog or to write your Facebook or to write Twitter. And we're going to talk about that right now.
Yes, so I know we're running a little long, and I want to get to all your questions, too, so I'll breeze through this. But basically, we hope that these examples that we've shown you really prove that you don't have to recreate the wheel every time. A lot of the strategies and styles apply across website, email, social, and use that content like we just did in that blog. We took Facebook content, put it in a blog post, like Jill said, link to other people's blogs, and there's lots of things you can do. We do this a lot with our newsletter, too. So we put our blog posts, we have a section of VR marketing blogs in our newsletter. We put, we write 2 or 3 a week, and we put every one in the newsletter, use the headline, a snippet of the first part of the copy, a call to action button, and link back to the blog, and it drives people to our blog, and they get to read more, and hopefully the little teaser information that we put in the newsletter makes them be like, oh yeah, I want to read the rest of this. So you have to have good content, of course, and it has to be applicable, make them want to read it, but share the information everywhere. You don't have to redo it for each different platform. People prefer longer updates and email newsletters. This is just a statistic that we got from Sticky Communications. So like we said, keeping it short, especially on social, is really, really important. You can grab those little tidbits of information from the longer pieces of content that you have in your newsletter, or other places that you're finding it on the web, as long as you're crediting. So you really can share and repurpose and not kill yourself. Check it twice. It's really important to spell check, to proofread, read what you're writing out loud so that you know what it will hear like to the audience, and show it to someone else. We make mistakes.
We do. We're human.
I write all the time, and I make spelling errors. And we have 3 to 4 people look at every piece of email that's going out, blog that's going out, Twitter. We don't pass it to 3 different people to see. But, we double check it, we spell check it, that kind of thing. Just the other day, we almost sent out our newsletter and had social on the subject line spelled SOCAIL. So thank God we had 4 people looking at it, and one person
No,
got that
it was Kim.
at the very last minute.
I replied and said, "Looks great." And then she noticed when I said it looked great that the subject line had a misspelling because my brain just fixed it.
Exactly.
But that's why you want a couple other people looking at it, just to make sure that everything looks good.
Exactly. And we have lots of resources for you guys for copywriting. The blog, our marketing blog, we talked about that a lot. It's a blog.verticalresponse.com. You can go there and search. We have all these great posts that are about social media and copywriting that would be really helpful for you and also relate to a lot of the things that we were talking about today. We have our copywriting group on the Lounge. You can go to lounge.verticalresponse.com and search for the copywriting group. And anytime we have anything copywriting related, we'll post it in there. We have a great help site, help.verticalresponse.com. And personally, I think one of the best blogs out there and copywriting destinations is Copyblogger, Brian Clark.
They're pretty inspiring, even
Yes.
if you're not writing a lot of copy. I subscribe to that as well, and I don't write anywhere near as much copy as Amber does. But I find it really inspirational and really interesting, and just reading how they write will probably inspire you because it is very
They could make
conversational.
anything interesting.
They probably could.
Sometimes there's not even a whole lot that they're talking about. It's just how they're talking. So
Yeah, it's a great place to get ideas.